Hello. In this final part of my mindfulness course, I'll be talking to you about the function of consciousness and how you can develop your own mindfulness practice. Let's get into it. If you've gone through the previous parts already, then you should know that I like to start with an exercise. Today, we're going to start with a slightly different mindfulness exercise. This time, we're not going to be focusing on our breath, but on a task. For this exercise, the focus will be on the task, and the breath will become a tool to help you return your focus to the task. I'll explain. I want each of you to recall a recent emotional memory that was unpleasant, frustrating, scary, or anything that produced some negative emotions. If you really can't think of anything recent, then you can try to go a bit further back, or maybe use one of your anxiety dreams. Now, because this is just an exercise, try to avoid any heavy hitters. Choose something that you think you can tolerate, because we're going to review it. I'll just give you a moment now to come up with something in your head. Equally, you can pause the video here until you've come up with something. Got one? Good. Keep it in mind, and we'll begin. When your inner mind is ready to review all aspects of what happened and your experience of it, will your eyes close as you review all aspects of what happened? As the various sceneries and emotions try to replicate themselves in you now, start noticing their quality. Notice how each emotion feels. Notice how they affect your heart rate and breathing. If you start feeling like you're being overtaken by the emotions, simply bring parts of your awareness back to your breath as the other part of you continues to review the memory from a place of safety. Do this as many times as you need to. As you review all aspects of what happened, notice what the emotions are pushing you to do. Notice the types of fantasies they are generating, what they wish would have happened instead. By focusing on its fantasies, as dark or as light as they are, instead of avoiding them, try to notice the thread that runs through them. Follow it if you can. Where does it lead? What is the nature of its wish? You can continue to review the memory and all its aspects for the next 2 minutes. Again, whenever you notice yourself becoming lost in the memory instead of observing it, return a part of your awareness back to your breath until its control lessens. If you find yourself being distracted by other things, notice it, then bring your awareness back to your breath, and then continue to review the memory. when you feel you've reviewed your memory and its processes to the fullest possible extent at this time, where you find yourself wanting to stretch and open your eyes, coming fully awake, alert, and refreshed. As you're returning from your exercise, here are some questions to ask yourself. What happened? What did you discover, if anything? What was the most interesting part of the exercise? Did you find it harder or easier than the mindful breathing exercise? And why do you think that is? How was it like to focus on emotions instead of just your breathing? And what do you think this task-oriented version of mindfulness can do for you in other areas of your life? Hopefully from that exercise and the questions, you're starting to notice how the mechanics of conscious decentering can not only disidentify your self-concepts from your experiences, but it can also enhance the overall scope of your experience. You become more focused or more conscious, so to speak. Colloquially, we can say that consciousness exists on a spectrum from highly conscious to barely conscious. The state of mindfulness, being at the self-reflective stage of consciousness, would definitely be up there on the high end of that spectrum. But what does it actually mean to say that somebody is currently highly conscious? Generally speaking, it's the level of awareness that determines the level of consciousness. You might ask, who wouldn't want to be highly conscious all the time? Isn't that what a lot of the gurus are selling? To answer that question, I should first try to define consciousness. Okay, let's give this a shot. So, what is consciousness? There have been many definitions of consciousness given by philosophers and scientists throughout human history, but here's my own take, and you can let me know what you think in the comments below. Consciousness is the faculty of one's motivated perception of that which exists. That is to say, perception and motivation are what together, and only when together, make consciousness possible and meaningful. Without perception, consciousness would have no reason to exist. Without motivation, you would be in a coma, in a state of complete unconsciousness. To clarify, I use the word perception here to mean the faculty responsible for the automatic and motivated discerning of things from pure unreduced sensory data. And since this faculty requires sensory data and the faculties that provide it, I would subsume the faculty of sensation under the faculty of perception. Furthermore, perception is motivated because to perceive is a non-determined act. Think about it. If perception was determined, there would be no reason for consciousness to exist, whose entire purpose is to choose a course of action from a pool of received information, that is, sensory information put through a process of reduction that makes it relevant to our needs. Fundamentally, the volitional selection of what thing to perceive, or put another way, what sensory data to reduce, is informed by 1. Our needs, and 2. Available opportunities. It is a dynamic system that works in continuity with our environment. At this basic consciousness qualifying object selection and recognition stage, we come to know that what we are sensing is a thing. That is, it is the result of an integrated biological process that extracts it from the chaos of pure sensory data. At this fundamental stage of consciousness, we know what we are sensing is a thing, but we do not know what that thing is. Before we get to the level of conceptualization to form a concept of what that thing is based on what we are perceiving, we have already exercised our primary choice as human beings. That is, the choice to either focus or not. The achievement of focus, both in its experience and state, qualifies us for being conscious. The greater the quality and scope of our focus at any given moment, the more conscious we are, so to speak. Okay, back to the question of who wouldn't want to be highly conscious all the time? you may find that the answer is perhaps quite an unintuitive one. From the perspective of self-organizing systems like us, the goal through natural selection has actually been to be as unconscious as possible. The as possible part is crucial. Why? Because as anyone who's good at doing anything knows, functional automatization is the ideal of learning. And it's really quite simple. When people say colloquially that they can do something with their eyes closed, they're describing a well-practiced skill that has become automatized, like walking, reading, and typing. Our focus is not only limited in bandwidth, but is also a high uncertainty and high energy state. And no wonder, because reality is full of uncertainties. So much so that mere innate action patterns, as the ethologists like to say, are insufficient to guide our survival. Because to survive, we need to know not only that a thing exists, but also what that thing is. That is, we need to be able to form concepts based on our perceptions in order to save bandwidth space. The limited bandwidth of our focus can be shown by the fact that human beings on average can only differentiate and retain 6 to 8 units of information in the focus of our awareness at any given time. Test it for yourself. Look at these words and see how many you can recall. Well, you probably got around 6 to 8 words. And you know, that's pretty good compared to crows, who can only differentiate and retain 3 units of information. When it comes to automatization, the reason that you come to see objects like an apple rather than percepts stripped of meaning is due to the automatized association of percepts with previously integrated concepts as a result of learning. To explain this, is best to just show you an example. Please take a look at this image. What do you see? What are the objects in the image? If you don't know, that's the point. Your experience of this image simulates a neurological disorder known as associative visual agnosia, also known as object agnosia. It describes an inability to conceptually recognize objects of any kind visually. It is a disorder of association from vision to concepts, almost always as a result of a bilateral posterior cerebral artery stroke, which causes lesions in these areas. The point is, that's how you might see the world without the functional automatization involved in visual association. Isn't it great that when we decide to look at an apple now, without any major effort besides just sustaining our focus, we automatically see the object and recognize it as an apple? Thank you, functional automatization. But if you have not previously integrated the concept of apple, you would not know what you were looking at. It would be something new, something foreign, something novel, and novelty invites our focus. You pay extra attention to things when they deviate from the norm so that you might learn something. And as you do that, you burn extra energy. The point of all this is that consciousness exists to perceive reality in order to form concepts, to learn. Why learn? Just try surviving without knowing anything. So, if there's nothing urgent to learn in the moment, you can rightfully argue that maintaining a high level of consciousness or focus becomes quite the overall waste of resources. Remember, what's the goal? Now, looping all the way back to mindfulness, when you practice it, you will be entering a high focus and high energy state. Use it wisely to resolve uncertainties, revise or update your concepts, and to solve real problems. If all you're ever doing in mindfulness is focusing on your breath for no reason, you are actively wasting away your time and energy. Mindfulness exercises trains you to sustain your focus in order to become highly proficient at decentering inwards to observe internal processes and outwards to observe frames. That's it. That's all it trains. Nothing else. Alone, it is insufficient. It requires you to direct it toward a purpose, a why. As you learn about mindfulness and as you come up with plans to practice it in your own life, I'd like to spend this last section of the course just going over how you might create your own mindfulness exercise. Why make your own instead of just using the countless pre-made ones available online? Because then it's yours, tailor-made to suit your specific needs. It means to transform it from something generic into a specialized tool for a specialized task. If that sounds like something you'd like to do, then take some notes. First, and the most important part of creating your own mindfulness practice is that you need a reason for practicing. Clarify a reason for practicing. Why practice? What's it for in your specific context? What are the values that your practice seeks to gain? For example, if you say it's to de-stress as a reason, I'm afraid that's not good enough. Why should you de-stress? Maybe you say, because stress feels bad. Well, why should you not feel bad given your circumstances? Maybe you should feel bad. Maybe the bad feelings are trying to tell you to do something that you've been actively evading for a long time. Or maybe the feelings are evoked in these specific contexts due to inaccurate information from a bad idea that you've avoided correcting. Maybe it's a whole bunch of bad ideas. Try your best to go as deep as you can when clarifying your reason for practicing, and state your reason positively first. A positively stated reason is one that provides you something to pursue, as opposed to a negatively stated reason which only provides you something to avoid. After developing a clarified, positively stated reason, you can add as many negative stated reasons on top of it as you'd like. That's totally fine. Just make sure the core reason comes first and is positively stated. A good sign of discovering a good reason is that you get an embodied sense that, yes, this is the thing you should be pursuing and that it is good. The number one reason that most people fail, not only in their mindfulness practice, but in the pursuit of any goals, is that they have not directed it towards a self-determined good purpose, a clarified, explicit purpose. Going deep can be difficult, and let's be honest, many people refuse to think, let alone think deeply, but that's content for another video. However, if you are going into mindfulness looking to solve your problems by refusing to think, period, until that changes, you cannot be helped. Your practice will only be as good as your reason for practicing, which in turn will be determined by your willingness to think, that is, to exercise reason. Once you have that core purpose for practicing, you work outwards. What are you trying to decenter from, and where to? Say your purpose is to overcome a fear of knowing that makes you lose valuable focus in particular moments due to obsessive and useless self-talk. Well, any practice that includes consciously decentering from the intrusive self-talk, then the fear is good. Remember, here you are determining the level or levels of self-concept you wish to observe and investigate. We are not evading what we are decentering from. We decenter from it so that we can observe it and investigate it. It is an active engagement with the contents of our focus. Next up, you need to decide what you're going to do once you've decentered yourself from whatever it is you're trying to create some distance from. In my example, do you want to explore the compulsive self-talk and its underlying emotions in order to understand it better? Do you want to get back in there to consciously embody it in order to see where it takes you so you have a better idea of its negative consequences while you're still in a safe place? Or do you want to expand outwards as far as you can and look at its impact on your self-concept and your relationship to the cosmos? You can meditate going inwards, or you can contemplate going outwards, or both simultaneously if you are skilled enough. Judge for yourself what is right for you. Besides that, everything else is free game. By everything else, I mean things like, if you want to keep your eyes open during practice, go ahead. If you find you can do it better standing up or hanging upside down, do that. If you want to practice while eating, brushing your teeth, walking down the street, working, listening to a meditation recording, attending a rock concert, doing paperwork, creating works of art, in the midst of an argument, whatever, do it. Frequency of practice, up to you. Time of day, up to you. Length of practice, breaks or no breaks, up to you. You can even practice with other people to use them in some way, like using eye contact to trigger things for you to then go and investigate. There are as many options as your imagination allows. Treat it almost like a physical exercise. Don't jump from 0 to 100 if you're not ready for it. To sum up, first, figure out the reason. This is your why. Then decide on the direction, scope, and level of focus. This is your how and where. Lastly, decide on your course of action. This is your what. Again, helpful reminders. Use a graded approach if you're unsure of your current skill level. Experiment and find what fits you and your specific goal. And with that, don't be afraid to change it up as you go. Keep in mind the role of the environment in your practicing. For example, if you're only ever practicing mindfulness relaxation in tranquil environments like your room, then don't expect your skill to translate well to high-stress environments, where you may need said skill the most. It's like how practicing swimming on land is not going to translate very well when you're thrown into the ocean. For this, try to practice in environments resembling those you are anticipating real difficulties in. Examples of the graded approach at work would be if you started with a 30-second long mindfulness meditation practice, then moving on to 3 minutes, then maybe later even on to 30 minutes. Or if efficiency or effectiveness is your goal, you can keep the practice duration the same, but set increasingly more complicated problems for yourself to solve. Or start by practicing in a peaceful environment, then work towards a busier and busier one. You could try to practice focusing on your breathing first. Then when you're comfortable with that, you can move on to focusing on your emotions, followed by focusing on maybe discovering the conceptual causes and conditions for your emotional drive states, where certain ideas come from, what that means for you in different areas of your life, etc., etc. Own your practice. The ideal outcome is when it becomes a natural and unremarkable part of your mental life, utilized without a second thought or feeling the need to label it as an instance of mindfulness. And that's a wrap. Good job of making it this far. This was my first video series here on YouTube, so I do hope that you found everything you needed to get into mindfulness. As usual, if you know someone who can benefit from this, please share it with them. I'd love to know your thoughts, so leave a comment below. And finally, like and subscribe for more future content on mental health and human nature. My name's Michael Chan, and have a lovely rest of your day.